we oftentimes think about, what is the role of government to help people who are poor and in need, and this is one of those issues. Taxes. The last thing. Read my lips. No new taxes. Oops. Han says nobody likes taxes. I disagree. I like taxes. I want the mayor of Casey, Elise Parton, to come over to my house right now. She's a neighbor of mine, and ask for money. Ooh. We pay our taxes. Thank you. But in any case, I like taxes because I like roads. I like having a road to drive on so I can get to work. I like having water. Well, that's private companies, but never mind. But there is this idea that government should not be in the business of doing pretty much anything except defending our country. But the thing is, in our country, we're always going to have, we need revenue because we're always going to have expenditures. There are certain things that nobody else can do but the government. But, I mean, there's always credits and debits. But our system here in the United States is that government sort of helps along private enterprises. So the government doesn't really truly own anything because that would be socialism. And that's why a lot of people had trouble with like Obamacare or universal health care and all that type of stuff. It seems like socialism. What is socialism? Nobody knows. It's socialism. Chicken. I'm hungry. Besides, many of us suspect that if the government owned all the chicken production, there soon would be a law requiring each family to serve chicken at least once a day. What would be wrong with that? Give the people their chicken. Why did the American cross the road? To get its chicken. So instead of letting government earn money, we have opted to keep all money-earning activities private and designate the portion of our earnings for the government to pay for its activities. So it's not true revenue. It's surplus, which is not really surplus, but it's money so they can do what it needs to be done. And then a lot of people say the government's way too big, although government's smaller than it used to be, I think. I don't know. So, where do most of our taxes go to? Military. I don't know exactly what it is right now. You can sort of look it up. And one of the things that I noticed in this particular section is that Han doesn't actually talk a lot about consequences and principles here. Not really. He just talks about how liberals and conservatives, because of the way our budget works, have been sort of labeled as tax and spend liberals and no new taxes conservatives. But basically, we have to have a strong military because, again, we want our country to exist. And so all the non-military things, that's the rest of the big pie. And it's not, I mean, military takes up a big piece of that pie. And so we've had a lot of old government programs that started. Han talks about FDR and Lyndon B. Johnson with a lot of the social programs to help people. Because there is, again, this is idea of equality in our society as well, that people, should be somewhat, or have the opportunities to live out the American dream, what have you. And so a lot of those programs are for the poor, they're for kids, they're for students in education, they're for the environment, and so, and a lot of people don't think the government should be in the business of doing a lot of that stuff. And if they do, they screw it up. So what happens, it's all about the role of government. That was the end. But what happens is that you have a lot of liberals who, because they believe in freedom and civil rights and order and economics, they tend to want more money for these social programs, whereas conservatives say not so much. We want, that should be for the private enterprises and everything like that. And we see that all over the place. I mean, I'll let you look at some of the specifics. A lot of the stuff that he talks about, or Han talks about, is specifically from the 90s and the 2000s, and so his example is a little bit dated. But one of the things that I think is really interesting here is This brief history then explains why most contemporary debates about government programs disintegrate very quickly into debates about taxes, and why liberals get tagged with a big taxer label. If 30 years had been devoted to dismantling the military rather than social programs, the reverse situation probably would be at hand. Conservatives would be calling for new military programs, and liberals would be pointing at them, screaming, "Big taxer." So oftentimes we don't talk about the issues, we don't talk about the warrants or the consequences or the whatever. Sometimes, well, I would liberals would look at the consequence, I would think. You know, we must pay for this or these bad things might happen. Or principle, I suppose. It's very important for all people to have, you know, some sort of minimally standard education, which also is problematic. So we should pay for this. That's a big South Carolina thing if you didn't already know about that. Okay, so what I've done in this somewhat brief thing is taking you through some of chapter 1. Maybe I helped out, maybe I didn't. But here's what I will come with. At some point I will have more on chapter 2 before we see each other next Tuesday. But this is what I would like you to do, and this is what I want us to do for Tuesday, for the most part, when we are face-to-face. I have put on KC links to Donald Trump's official page and Hillary Clinton's official page. What I would urge you to do if you want to be a good student, an educated citizen, a scholar, if you care about your education, I would look at, on their websites, both of them have where we stand on the issues or something like that. Look at when they talk about military, defense, or foreign policy. Do they have anything about government surveillance? Do they have anything about academic freedom? Probably not. Do they have anything about welfare programs? Do they have anything on taxes? What are some of the other issues? And when you read those stances, do they tend to align with how Hahn sets out what liberals tend to think about or what they tend to believe, and what conservatives tend to believe? And Clinton, as you know, is probably going to align herself more with the liberal way of thinking, and Trump will probably align himself with more conservative ways of thinking. When you read through that, does that hold true? And then, you know, what type of arguments do they make when you're going through these stances? Do they offer an argument of principle? Do they offer a argument from consequence? So what's going on there? So it's a way of intellectually thinking about, you know, what's going on and when people talk about the issues and where they stand on the issues, and et cetera, and tying it all back to the ways that liberal and conservatives tend to think and argue within the larger landscape of political communication and politics as a process of communicatively solving public problems. Okay, good enough. I, again, will be back at some point, not today, but later on the weekend with Chapter 2. Hope you watch this and enjoy it. If not, you know, well, I'm sorry for that. Have a wonderful evening, and I think there's a football game on tonight. That's what I will be doing. Take care.